Hello and welcome to another episode of Why Design. I'm your host Chris White, and this episode was the second live recording at Blue Garage in Lewisham. So a big thanks to Michael Korn and the Blue Garage community for letting us use the space. On this episode, I'm joined by Tim Perry, an innovation and design strategy consultant with over 20 years of experience across design, strategy, and commercial growth. Tim has worked with brands like Ford, McLaren, Samsung, Logitech, and Sky. He's scaled design consultancies, helped steer the growth and eventual sale of international agencies, and played a key role at Nokia during its years as a market leader. These days, Tim works with in-house and agency teams, helping them sharpen their commercial skills, improve their positioning, and ultimately win more of the right kind of work. In this episode, we're diving into that critical intersection between design and business. Tim shares his views on why designers need to develop commercial awareness early in their careers, what makes or breaks an agency's positioning, and how to approach business development in a crowded and competitive market. So whether you're a designer, agency leader, or just someone navigating the business side of creativity, there's plenty here for you to take away. So let's get into it. Tim Perry, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
The second of the live podcasts that I've recorded. We're still here at Quick Screen and the Blue Garage. So yeah, thank you again to Michael for letting us use the space. But yeah, really good to have you with me. So I'm going to do my best to introduce you, kind of do a very potted history of yourself and also kind of what we're going to talk about. So Tim, we met fairly recently, in the last few months I think it is, but actually our stories are quite interwoven in terms of the markets that we serve. But for anyone that doesn't know you, you're a innovation and design strategy consultant, helping in-house and agency teams with strategy and innovation, and helping agency owners with growth advice, providing commercial skills training. This is your life kind of bit, which most people cringe at, but we'll get through it pretty quickly. You studied at Coventry University, transportation and product design, and your early experience included time in Chicago, establishing a US office for Web de Vlam, practiced that earlier. You've got over 20 years experience spanning design, strategy, commercial growth across FMCG, mobility, and consumer tech. You've worked with brands such as Ford, Hyundai, McLaren, Samsung, Logitech, and Sky when you were the director, or a director at the Plan. You've led the 3x growth. I mean, some of these achievements are fantastic. So 3x growth of Web de Vlam's UK and Singapore offices before overseeing the sale of the international group. And you were head of design strategy and portfolio at Nokia, managing the design strategy for Nokia's largest category of mobile phones when they were market leader, selling over 1 million devices a day. Cracky, that seems like a long time ago.
It does.
And you've also, you spent time as a visiting lecturer of design and technology at the University of Winchester as well. So yeah, quite an interesting career so far. From the conversations we've had, there's even more to come. Yeah, really good to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. We're going to focus on the commercial side today, and it kind of ties in with some of the huddles that we've had recently on business development and strategy and kind of a consultancy's place in the market and positioning. But as this is the Why Design podcast, we've got to start at the beginning and ask you, Tim, why design?
Why did I get into it?
Yeah.
Well, I thought I was going to be an engineer. So
Okay.
I studied maths, physics and design at university, and I found quite a lot of people studied those three A-levels, not at university, A-levels. Yeah. And then one day my dad took me to the Royal College of Art degree show and to the design degree show, and it just completely blew me away, opened my eyes, and I realised that's what I wanted to do, not be an engineer. And then we went into the room where the automotive designers were exhibiting, and the visuals and the models that they did, because I'd always been into cars, just took it to another level. So yeah, that's when I realized I'd love to do something like that. That was the postgraduate degree show. So I looked around and found that the only place that you could do automotive design at the time in the UK was Coventry. So I applied there with huge A2 portfolio under my arm. And I was lucky enough to get a place.
Awesome. And did you end up designing any cars throughout your career?
Not throughout my career, no. I mean, we did that at college, of course, but I realized quite quickly that, I mean, there were people there who just, that's all they wanted to do was, and that's all they did all day, every day, and they were brilliant at it, where they were styling cars. I realized pretty early on my interest in design was at the other end of the process, not at the styling end of the process, much more at the front end of the process where you're sort of and solving problems maybe more rather than at the styling end. So I persevered with the course, but actually I didn't do a car for my final year project, which is what almost everybody did. This was back in the mid-90s, so I'm kind of dating myself now. But I did an inner city courier vehicle.
Okay.
And when I set out to do it, I had no idea what it would be. I didn't know whether it would be 2-wheeled, 3-wheeled, 4-wheeled, whether it would have wheels, how it would be powered, whether it would be powered. And I went and met with Addison Lee, who were just starting out back then. And I interviewed a load of their motorcycle couriers and interviewed members of the public as well to find out what people thought about them. And anyway, to cut a long story short, I ended up designing a 2-wheeled electric vehicle. It had some form of device on the top. I didn't know quite what at the time, but it was inspired by taxi drivers who learned the knowledge on scooters with a clipboard in front of them. So it had some form of connected screen-based device on the top that would allow them to coordinate their pickups and deliveries. And this is all sort of, pre-GPS and mobile phones. So yeah, it's really gratifying now to sort of see all of the 2-wheeled electric vehicles, buzzing around, and last mile is a huge thing now, which wasn't even a term back then. So yeah, I sort of more by luck than judgment, I think I was a bit ahead of my time.
Pioneer.
Should have made it.
Known it, yeah. The cargo bike scene especially is huge and grown very rapidly. So I was at Eurobike last summer, and it seemed half of the things that you were dodging as you were walking around the stands were people trying to navigate these cargo bikes around. Yeah, it's an incredible experience at Eurobike because you get to test the stuff, but it's also a double-edged sword because driving or riding a cargo bike isn't like riding a normal bike. So you get a lot of people going, what's going on?
Right, yeah. Hopefully it's behind a fence somewhere away from where you're walking.
Yeah, there is a test track, but then they have them at the stands as well. Right. So there was a number of times where you're just like, you've definitely got to be aware of your surroundings when you walk around that show, that's for sure. So brilliant. So talk us through your early career then, kind of get into, maybe don't go into every kind of facet, but what were some of the formative kind of experiences early on?
So I graduated in the 90s recession. So getting a job, it's always hard for a graduate designer to get a job, but it seemed particularly hard back then. So it was really a question of getting whatever I could. And my first job was actually working for a manufacturer of point of sale products.
Right.
So the shop floor literally was a factory with injection molding machines and huge, great industrial vac formers and so on. And we worked on the floor above the factory in the design studio.
It wasn't DM, was it?
No. I'm not sure if the company's still around anymore, actually. But the design was given away for free. So basically, this company would convince their clients to buy their point of sale equipment and that they manufactured, and that's where they made their money. And the design studio was actually just an overhead. We would design it for free. So that was where I learned how to use a Mac, because we all had big drawing boards and were doing things by hand. So I learned how to use a Mac, and those skills back then were in quite high demand. So I went and freelanced around London for a while. So I didn't stick with the point of sale company for very long. And that was really interesting because I got to see marketing companies, design companies, even advertising companies as I sort of used my Mac skills. And I realized that where I wanted to go was into packaging. It sort of opened my eyes to brand, really, which hadn't really been covered at university. We talk about car marks, but not really about brand. And I realized I could use my 3D design training and skills to design three-dimensional packaging. So I found a company that was called Web Scarlet at the time and got a job there as a packaging designer.
Oh, cool.
And that's when I was there for a while. I went over to the States for 3 years and helped set up a US office. Came back and they offered me a partnership, and for whatever reason, I know the reason, I wanted to do something different, so I turned them down. And that's when I went and worked at Nokia. I just wanted to do something very different, and working in consumer electronics and on the client side of the fence was a complete change and a wonderful experience.
Yeah. Well, so how was that transition then from packaging, which is a very non-complicated in terms of the electronics inside it usually, through to the most cutting edge electronics at the time with Nokia?
Yeah, well, I challenge that a little bit, because when you're designing, and one of the things we designed that everybody sort of knows about and probably a lot of people have in their kitchen still is the fairy liquid bottle. And if you think about the volume of that bottle, how many of those have been made? By the way, it's also used in Europe for other Procter & Gamble brands and in the US for the Dawn brand, and across all different sizes and so on. It's probably been made in the billions.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when you're designing something that is made at that scale, it really is complicated, because you have to shave every fraction of a cent off the price of that thing and optimize it for all kinds of different situations. So actually, I'm maybe getting a bit defensive here, but designing a piece of packaging can be actually tremendously complicated and involved. But I didn't really go from designing the packaging to designing the phones. So my role at Nokia being in design strategy and portfolio management, we had something like, I mean, it seems amazing to say it now the iPhone's launched, but we had something like 45 different phones in the market at any one time, all with a different industrial design. And then there were all the different variants of that for different operators and markets and colors and so on. But my job, put simply, was to make sure that all of the phones felt like they were similar enough that they came from one brand. And that was really important, because when people changed phone, you wanted them to stick with Nokia. So if you reinvented it and it worked in a completely different way, and the user interface and the UX was completely different, then people would leave the brand. So it was important to keep a certain degree of consistency. But at the same time, each of those different models was aimed at a particular market. So they also had to be differentiated from one another. So design strategy and portfolio was about managing that balance. So I wasn't actually sitting at a CAD station designing the phones. My role was more of an overview of the portfolio.
Okay, interesting. And then was that your first kind of foray into that strategic side then, or had you been doing that with the consultancy?
I think inevitably when you're consulting, whether you label it strategy or not, you're kind of doing some of that already. But yes, it was and I guess with my time at the packaging company, I had started already to move away from the hands-on designing to the running projects and running accounts, where inevitably you have to do some strategic thinking and guidance with the clients. But yeah, this was a proper move away from the tools.
Awesome. So if we fast forward a little bit then, talk us through kind of that change, because you mentioned the US, but how long were you at Nokia, and then what was it plan after that, or?
No, actually, so I was at Nokia for between 4 and 5 years, something like that. And I describe it as I caught the tail end of the glory years before the iPhone launched, when everything was rosy, and as you know, we were shipping millions of phones and were number one in the market by miles. And then the iPhone launched, and I sort of got to observe that what has now become a case study from the inside, which was fascinating. But it was kind of clear what was happening. I think the week that I left Nokia went from it was still the number one player worldwide in terms of volume of phones shipped, of handsets shipped. But Apple, that week that I left, became the number one player in the market by value. So they were making more money out of phones with just basically one model than everybody else was with their huge portfolio. So around about that time, the guy that I helped set up the US office got back in touch with me and said that the founding partners in the UK had enough and were leaving, and he asked me to come back. So I went back to the same company, but this time to run the London studio as a partner.
Oh, awesome. Was that Plan?
That was Web de Vlam. So it was the same. So yes, so it had changed name from Web Scarlet that it was before I was at Nokia, and I went back and it was Web de Vlam at that point. And Yeah, it was, the business was struggling. I think we were about sort of 10 people at that point. We were needing to move out of the office that the previous partner had owned. And yeah, we just had a phenomenal period of growth over the next 6-7 years. Moved office twice, hired lots of people, got loads of new clients. I mean, it was just, anyone who's been in that situation at an agency just knows what a fun time it is. It's hard, but
yeah, I was going to say
it's hard, but it's great. When things are going and you're on that sort of steep part of the growth curve, it's wonderful.
So as Nokia's decline, you were on the other way.
Yeah, quite sort of differently scaled companies. Yeah.
How was that transition then from obviously Nokia being quite a huge business at that time through to a 10-person team? What were the main challenges?
Well, I think I was going back to what I knew, really, because I'd spent much more time on the consulting side of the fence than on the corporate side of the fence. And I think, I'm a huge advocate for people working on both sides, but most of us feel more comfortable one side or the other.
Yeah.
And I think for me, it's been on the consulting side time. And then we were to change it even more subsequently. But it was back to something I was familiar with, I guess.
I think, having that experience of both sides, and especially going back into consultancy, sure, that makes you a more rounded consultant as well, because you've seen it firsthand.
I think whichever side you work, if you can try working the other side, it just, puts you in those shoes.
Whilst you're at Nokia, did you have experience working with other consultants?
Yes. Yeah. So we would bring in consultants for various things, for research, for design, for all sorts of things. I'm
guessing that's something that you wouldn't necessarily normally encounter in a consultancy environment either, because, why would you?
Yeah.
But so it's all value, isn't it? So, and that one, like you say, grew phenomenally. What were some of the kind of the key challenges that have really shaped you now from that time of massive growth?
So I think the growth, interestingly, a lot of people, someone pointed this out to me recently, but and I advise a lot of my clients to specialize and to narrow their focus, whereas actually a lot of our growth came from the opposite, from expanding our focus from physical packaging design into brand identity and on-pack graphic design through to retail design and all sorts of other touch points that sort of surrounded the packaging for a brand. So we sort of expanded our offer that way, but we also moved upstream from doing just the design execution into the research and the strategy that comes before it. So I suppose that was the big thrust that really kind of led to that rapid period of expansion.
Was that an active, strategic decision to do that, or was that from clients saying, "Oh, can you do this?" Because sometimes you organically kind of. Yeah,
I guess looking, it's hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it? And it tends to make things clearer. But no, it happened somewhat organically, but it was definitely something that we wanted to capture more of that value, because a lot of us do that strategic thinking and work anyway in order to do the design execution. But no, it was another team, another profit center that we could introduce and charge good rates for. So it was an intentional thing, but quite a difficult thing to do, because if you're known for designing objects, then that's what clients come to you for, and they point at it and they say, "I want one of those, please." And you can start talking about all of the strategy, and they'll know, no, I want one of those, please. And you have to convince them that you need to go through those steps in order to get the physical product at the end of it. So,
any advice that you would give? Looking back, that you would give yourself to, I don't know, get through that a bit quicker, or
it sounds silly that it took us so long to realize this, but I think it's something that a lot of product design companies are still guilty of today, is that we realized that the reason that they were coming to us for physical products was because that's what we showed them that we did. Our website was full of beautiful images of physical products. When people came into our offices, we had plastic bottles on glass shelves with spotlight shining on them like they were museum pieces. So we were telling people that's what we do. So we took what felt like quite a brave step at the time, and we took a lot of, not all, but we took a lot of the pack shots and sort of beauty images off our website and we took them off the shelves in our office. and we replaced them with pictures of people interacting with brands.
Okay.
So the main shot or the main focus of the image was a person, and somewhere on there would be their interaction with this brand. And so the message shifted away from being focused on the product, the thing, the artifact, and to the relationship between a customer, a person, and the brand that they were using.
And what impact did that decision have, and the repositioning have on the product bit then? Did you see any change?
Not really. I mean, it didn't change overnight.
No.
And typically, I suppose, clients that were existing clients that knew us from before would carry on using us as they had before, and we might talk to them about strategy work. But it meant that when new clients came in, new prospects came along, we could talk equally about the strategy as well as the design execution. So it is that kind of classic, reinvent yourself one client at a time thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm guessing the research and strategy side of things, once you've got them as a client and you've done great work for them, well, they probably already know at this point, by the way, we can take it even further for you.
Yeah.
So, sell the front end bit and the rest will follow.
Yes.
Your existing clients
Yep.
already know you for that, don't they?
So that went really, really well, and we grew the company in Chicago, London, and then opened a little satellite office in Singapore to just around 100 people.
Yeah.
And we attracted a buyer. And again, to cut a long story short, because it was a long period of, I think, 9 months of dealing with accountants and lawyers around the world.
Pulling your business apart.
We saw, looking under every single rock, and we sold the business.
That's
a group of businesses.
I'm interrupting this episode to share some exciting things happening around why design. At the core of this podcast are the incredible design journeys my guests have been on and where they're heading. And these journeys stem from the relationships they build, the communities they're part of, and the amazing achievements that come from collaboration. So beyond the podcast, we're hosting regular online huddles and quarterly meetups in the UK, with plans underway for an annual gathering in the US. We're also running hands-on workshops both in person at Makerspaces and online to connect and inspire people in physical product development. So if you'd like to join us or stay in the loop about upcoming events, sign up at teamkodu.com/events or click the link in the show notes. Now, back to the episode.
So the sale's gone through.
Yep.
What came next?
So I guess, like many people running businesses, when they're bought, they don't hang around for very long. So I did exit fairly soon after selling. And I was in the US again, but at that point, living in the US again at that point. So I came back to the UK, and that's when I joined Plan as a director. And that was really fascinating because it continued that journey upstream. So Plan, if people aren't aware of it, is a London-based consultancy that only does strategic work, research and strategy work. We used to describe it as left of brief. And it was really interesting going from a company that had its roots in designing physical products and trying to move upstream, and always having that anchor, if you like, in the physical products, and clients saying, no, but I want that, not the strategy, to working for a company that really focused on the strategy and did that. Almost everything was strategy work. There was a little bit of prototyping. And there the resistance is, well, we love the strategy, but can you show us what it'll look like? So you kind of get the sort of 180 opposite challenge from clients and prospects in that environment. But no, again, I learned a huge amount of really focusing on the research, really focusing on the strategy, doing that really thoroughly, because that was what we were selling. It was a great experience.
Yeah. Was it coming from that background then of having the strategy and then being able to deliver on kind of the great insights, how was that then in terms of, it must have been frustrating to not be able to do the next bit, because I guess that was an active choice of the business.
I guess so. I think that was just where my interest had sort of moved over the years, was more to the sort of business strategic side of it rather than the delivery side of it. And my hands-on skills had got pretty rusty by then, I'm sure, as well. So no, I'm sure a lot of people would really miss that. I didn't find I did. It's just a different challenge, I suppose.
Yeah.
But I think it's really difficult for, I'm sure people are all thinking, oh, but we do all of that. We do the strategy all the way through to the execution. And I think it's difficult to convince clients that you can be an expert at all of those different stages. Not so much with smaller clients, but the really big clients will want to kind of shop for best of breed often, and they will want to go and find a specialist in strategy or in research, and then a specialist in the conceptual side of design, and then perhaps a specialist in the DFM piece at the end.
So, and we've spoken a lot about positioning, and that kind of ties nicely into that. And I guess that really kind of cements that, I guess, in terms of, there is that temptation to do the next bit, and it's very easy to say yes, isn't it? But actually it can be a lot more, profitable and enjoyable, and fruitful to say no to a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I think if somebody asks you, it's okay to say yes, but I think it's when you're trying to convince them, it's difficult. Yeah. But we'd work with partners. So if we found that we had, opportunities that were outside of our core capability, we would introduce another partner or work together with them. And, that's provided a better solution probably. I guess, if you're an agency of 50 odd people, you can credibly say that you do all of those things. But I think one of the challenges that I see with the smaller companies is that they just stretch that credibility a bit far with, and you just, it's difficult for clients to believe that you can do all of those things.
Yeah, absolutely. So with Plan, that was, I'm right in thinking that was a much smaller business to the one that you exited. Yeah. So you've really kind of got.
Yeah, it was quite nice though to get back into a smaller business and be closer to the clients and be doing less of the running of the business that I had been doing before when I was a partner at my company. That's
one thing a lot of senior designers and engineers I speak to, they mentioned they miss the hands-on. They love the people. They love seeing, they get their kicks out of developing people and kind of building the business, but they really miss being hands-on. And I think that gets to a fork in the road really in a lot of people's career where they just realise, I've got to decide whether to stay on the tools or kind of move more into people leadership. But wonderful. So what was next then
So a couple of years ago, I left Plan and set out on my own.
Yeah.
And it is just me. Again, if I run into things that are beyond my capability or capacity, I can partner up with people. I'm very privileged to have a wonderful network of contacts now. So I generally know somebody who can help if it's not me. And I do three things. So the first is I still dabble in innovation and design strategy, and that tends to be working directly with my own clients. But most of the focus that I've had over the last couple of years has been on the other two things, which first of all is providing growth advice to people leading their own creative businesses, mainly design businesses. I hope that I feel somewhat qualified to do that, having grown mine and exited mine. And the third thing that I do started as a bit of a side gig, actually, and it's sort of become more serious, which is I provide training that I call commercial skills for creatives. And really it's based upon my own experience of realizing fairly early in my career as a practicing designer that I could provide so much more value to my consultancy. And the way that I could provide the most value, in addition to doing my day job of designing, would be to help bring work in. And anybody who's running or even just worked at a consultancy knows that new business is the lifeblood of any of those businesses selling creative services of any kind, not just design. And so, I sort of made a conscious effort to sort of move towards that. But hot on the heels of that realization came another one, which was that I was just completely unprepared for it. My design education had not prepared me for this side of business at all. And that's not really a criticism of universities. I've got several friends who are leading courses and I've spoken to about this, and I understand that, it's not something, probably rightly, that is focused on a tremendous amount. But I just realized I had to learn on the job. And I'm sure I made loads of mistakes and, had the floor wiped with me a few times. But, you kind of struggle through it and get better at it and learn from people who are good at it around you and demonstrate it. And so having sort of seen the value of that, of helping bring work into your company and seeing that served me really well, you helped me get sort of promotions, and ultimately I ended up running that company that I was working at, albeit in a rather circuitous way. I've always promoted those skills to my team members. So when I left Plan, I kind of had this sort of bank of lunch and learn materials in my head that I had used with my staff. And so I turned them into a series of training programs, which first of all I delivered in person, and I still do that if it's somewhat local and a group of 5 people or more. But I've also turned them into online videos as well.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I've taken a look at some of your stuff, and that's quite an undertaking. And I can't imagine. I know from just recording intros to podcasts at home and hearing my fiance laugh in the other room because I've repeated the same sentence 10 times.
It's awful having to sit in front of a camera right in front of your face and speak into it and try not to sound like you're reading or look like you're reading. Yeah, it's really tough, and you have to kind of get over a hump. I thought I was going to get it done in a couple of days, and then after about half a day, I thought, I can't do this. It's just never going to happen, and you have to kind of battle on through it, and eventually, they're okay.
I've not yet mastered the kind of skill of looking at the camera directly as if you're looking in the eyes of your guest. So this setup is actually perfect because I don't need to look at the camera.
Oh, you forget it's on when this is here. Yeah. No, I had to do it because I had to refer to notes. I mean, I've got a huge respect now for TV presenters who just learn their lines or ad lib and do it to camera, and it sounds natural. A phenomenal skill. I had to put some notes on a screen and put my camera as close as possible, so I'd be looking past the camera to the screen just to refer to my notes.
Yeah, I'm the same. But thankfully, I think most people listen to this and then watch it. So that's brilliant. You're obviously in this position where you're engaging with consultancies, you're helping them on their commercial skills, and business development is key, isn't it? From what you've seen over the last few years, and I guess throughout your career, what would you say are some of the kind of, when you're looking at it, some of the most common low-hanging fruit, for want of a better term? It's so easy to overlook easy wins, isn't it? Because they're staring you in the face. Yeah,
I mean, I guess when I'm providing growth advice, business development is the most common one, of course, because again, like we just said, it's what fuels any creative business selling creative services. And so usually people come to me saying, can you help me with my business development? Can you help me with my marketing? And we spend a little bit of time together, and I look at what they've got, and we talk about, well, what are you going to say? What are you saying to the world about your services and about your company? And almost always we have to go back a stage or two to a more foundational point of tuning a business's positioning in the marketplace and its value proposition, and then how it articulates that value proposition to the market. And we have to do that stage first before we then figure out, okay, well, how are you going to market? How are you going to, what channels are you going to use? What do we figure out first, what are you going to say? Because it's crowded, right? I mean, it's really, really crowded. Yeah, makes me cringe every time I say it, but there's no better way of saying it. But Alex Hormozi says that the riches are in the niches. And obviously it's niche, but it doesn't rhyme. But it's so true, pick your lane and become the master. Like that old adage, like mile deep, inch wide, or the other way around. It works. And that's what I meant earlier about being able to say no to stuff. Yeah, I think, but it's really hard, right? Because we want to do as much as we can, and we enjoy enjoy the variety. But I think the secret is that your positioning, what you say to the market that you do, doesn't have to be, and in fact isn't the same as what you do. So you can say that you focus and that you specialize on something, but no matter how hard you try, you're still going to get inquiries about other things, and you can accept those other things. You can choose to turn them down if you like, but you can accept those other things, but they don't need to be on your website front and center. So you can, what you choose, how you choose to position yourself doesn't need to be how you then work ultimately.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I was probably getting more down where it's straying from your expertise. But like you say, if it's a different category of product design, it's well in your wheelhouse. Then
I think I saw another nice post, and I'm really sorry I can't credit somebody with it. Hopefully someone will comment and remind me who it was that said this, because it was quite recently on LinkedIn. And they said that they much prefer the word specialism to niche.
Yeah.
And I think it's a really great point, because niche sounds small and it sounds like you're limiting yourself, whereas a specialism actually opens up all sorts of work.
Well, what rhymes with it though?
I haven't got the snappy mnemonic, I'm afraid.
It's so true what you said. I was speaking to a small consultancy owner, an owner of a small consultancy, a little while back, and he came to me and says, "Chris, I've been approached about this work, but it's outside of our specialism. It's outside of our kind of what we want people to see us for." And he was thinking about doing it as a freelancer and asking me about the implications of all that. I said, "Well, why not just put it through the business?" He says, "Well, it's not planet friendly. That's our thing." And I said, "Yeah, but is it going to pay the bills? Is it damaging the planet? Is it so fundamentally against your ethics?" He says, well, no, but it's not in line with the kind of stuff we do. So just don't put it on your website. If it pays the bills and enables you to survive and do more of the stuff you want to be seen for, then
and if it comes at a point that your client, I think that you're quiet, perhaps. I think it's difficult if it does contradict your sort of core values. And usually, your values and what you stand for as a business should hopefully overlap at very least, if not align. So long as it doesn't contradict that directly, then absolutely, you can do the work. You just don't need to talk about it afterwards.
Absolutely. It enables you to do more of the good stuff. Wonderful. Talk us more through some of the challenges, the themes that you're seeing. Your positioning is at the core, but what can consultancies, what can owners do?
I guess, like I said, business development is the most frequent request I get. With larger companies, it can sometimes be about working with their leadership team. So there comes sort of fairly early in people's career, I guess. I remember it happening to me. You make a transition from an internal facing only role where you're delivering and you're designing and you're on the tools, as you said earlier, to a more external facing role where you are interacting with clients more. And I think a lot of designers find that transition really difficult. A lot of us are introverts, I know I am, and that client interaction often involves a lot of difficult conversations around money, for example, or timings and deliverables and deadlines. And so I think that's what my training tries to address, is that sort of critical point where you're going from that internal facing role to an external facing role. And it's not for everybody. Some people are quite happy, continuing in their hands-on design delivery roles throughout their career and perhaps, follow a specialist or a principal career pathway. But a lot of people will find themselves, almost by accident, sometimes managing projects, managing a group of more junior people who've joined them joined the company since they did. And then they start facing clients. And it's really hard for us to know how to do that. So my courses are designed to sort of help with that. And even down to, I'll have verbatim, if you've got to ask this question, it's a difficult question to ask, say these words, and then be quiet, listen for an answer. And if you hear this, it's a red flag. If you hear this, it's a sort of proceed, but with caution. And if you hit this, great, you're good to go.
Oh, cool.
So it's really, really sort of pragmatic. But what I'm trying to do with it is that it gives those really practical it gives that really practical guidance. But at the same time, it's about, at a higher level, it's about switching your mindset to becoming a little bit more entrepreneurial and a bit more focused on the business and being able to take yourself out of the shoes of the designer and into the shoes of the client.
And usually, and I guess referring back to your earlier career, are there courses? Are there, obviously you've got your course, but were there courses, was the training available for the commercial side? Because like you say, a lot of people are there accidentally, as well as managers.
I see quite a lot of training courses out there for people leading agencies and consultancies, but I don't see. And then I see quite a lot of courses out there on the hard skills for practicing designers. But I suppose the gap that I saw was, for that group of people, sort of somewhere in the middle, there's not much out there that I've seen, at least, helping them with commercial skills.
And I usually save this question for right at the end, but it kind of makes sense to bring it in now. What kind of material is there out there outside of kind of traditional courses? I'm thinking podcasts and books and things. A few that I have really absorbed and I've waxed lyrical about it is, Alex Hormozi's books are great from an entrepreneurial point of view. And then Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference, is just great life skills, let alone negotiating. But are there any texts or resources that...
I guess, you've probably, without meaning to, maybe put your finger on it there, which is that you have to get out of the design world. You have to get into the business press and the business world to kind of pick these things up. But then you somehow have to translate them back into our world because it's not the same. What we're doing and what we're selling is often very different to what the author of a book like that was maybe thinking about. But still, I think it's a really good thing to do, is get out of the design press and out of looking at pictures and looking at business books and then using your experience to apply it back to what you do. Another really great one, which is a really easy read, is Sales on a Beer Mat. That's another good one. I can't remember the author now, but that's another great one.
We'll add that to the list. So one that I was recommended quite a long time ago, The Accidental Salesman or Accidental Salesperson. It's because, most salespeople just land into it and they don't have any training, but actually with a few questions to add to their arsenal, it can unlock. It's all about asking questions, really.
It's about asking questions, and actually it's about not selling. I've yet to meet anybody who likes being sold to, right? Nobody likes it. So it's about understanding what somebody's need is, what they're looking for, and figuring out whether you can provide that or not. It's perfectly all right not to. And people, if you tell them that you can't help them, they will trust you when they have a problem that they do need help with, that you can help them with, because you've been honest the time before. So
if you think about it, designers, engineers, because of that element of curiosity and problem solving, you're not too far removed from a very good consultative salesperson, because that is all it takes, is curiosity, being genuinely interested. Well, and asking questions to solve problems.
What's that word that we say that we're really brilliant at? Empathy. So need to take a spoonful of our own medicine sometimes.
Absolutely. So I'm taking the key takeaway is just don't sell. Don't bother trying to learn to sell, because no one wants to be sold.
Yeah, I think the other thing you asked earlier about low-hanging fruit, I think networking is really, really critical. The more people you know, the more people can help you, the more likely you're going to get a lead, the more likely someone will refer you, recommend you. So never stop that. And be really generous, pay it forward, as they say. Yeah,
and to credit Alex Hormozi again, he literally has a whole kind of book just stating give. You could just have that 100 times. And you very rarely need to ask, but you'll get a load of stuff along the way.
Yeah.
Networking, do you have a go-to icebreaker or opener, or if not, any advice for people networking?
I don't have a go-to, no. I think the main thing is just to talk about them, to ask questions, and do a little bit of homework first. Go and find out what that person's interested in and what they do. I suppose being flattering is always good. Everybody likes to, be appreciated. So I think a little bit of flattery can go a long way. And then just, be genuinely interested in what people do and ask them about it.
Yeah, I think my experience and advice kind of mirrors that. But, if it's you don't know who's going to be there, they don't know who's going to be there either. So just be the first one to go, hey, what brings you here? And just... It doesn't need to be. Sometimes it doesn't need to be more complicated, does it?
It can be really. It can still be. Because I guess when you're doing what most people do when they talk about networking, is they imagine it as a sort of, physical in-person networking event and all of that sort of awkwardness that goes with it. One thing I've discovered, because I'm quite active on LinkedIn, and I put a picture of myself on the last slide of most of my posts, and it's had this wonderful sort of unintended consequence, which is that when I do go to physical in-person networking events, people recognize me and just tap me on the shoulder.
That's
and it's
weird,
just,
isn't it?
it's brilliant because it saves that sort of awkwardness of starting a conversation with somebody. So it's wonderful. And I really love it when people do that.
I love it. I'm not sure I'll ever get over it though, because I go to network. I was at one last night at Battersea Power Station, and a few people come up to me and they recognise me. Obviously, we've never spoken before, but the joy of LinkedIn and obviously having a podcast.
No, there is that difficult moment when someone says hello to you and you think,
have we spoken
before? What's your name? Do I know you? And but no, generally it's wonderful. I really appreciate it when people do that.
It is, but I do go through that mild panic every single time. And it's even worse when I have spoken to them.
Well, that's the worst, but you can usually, smile and apologise.
Yeah. Well, absolutely, too many people, too many faces.
Fess up. Sorry.
So we're coming up to, towards the end of time, but let me go through my list. So we've talked about kind of obviously your journey. We talked about kind of growing and selling a consultancy and some of the lessons around that. The commercial skills for designers and agencies. You mentioned on our prep for this that you had a kind of a horror story or a near horror story.
You said you asked me, for a story of when things went really well and a time when things went really badly, and it kind of comes into one, and it's a negotiation story actually that is now made. It's one of the stories I use in my negotiation training course. But I was sitting in our meeting room. It was very sort of classic, conference room table, and it was with a group of foreign clients, and it was a bit like a summit meeting. They were all sitting down one side, we were sitting down the other. I was at the head of the one end of the table. The boss of the client, who spoke very little English, was at the other end of the table. We even had a translator in the room to help with the communication. And they kept on asking for the same thing over and over again, no matter how many times I explained we couldn't do it. And I'm not even sure what it was right now. I think they wanted us to sort of throw in a small free project if they gave us a big one. And I was absolutely determined not to just fold and to agree to this. I was very tempted to, I could kind of see all of my folks sort of, willing me to just do it, please. But I was absolutely determined not to just sort of give this work away for free. But they kept on asking, and they kept on asking in a different way, a slightly different way each time. And eventually I just lost it. And I banged on the table. When my hand came down on the table, it made a big bang, and I just said, no. And just everything went silent. And I was like, oh God, what have I done? And everybody was looking at me thinking, you've blown it, you idiot. And there was this really uncomfortable pause afterwards, until the guy at the other end of the table just looked at me and he smiled and he said, okay. And I was hugely relieved because I really did think I'd blown it. But it did teach me a really important lesson in negotiating, which is that sometimes people will keep on asking and asking and asking until they hear a firm no. Now, I wouldn't recommend banging your hand on the table and shouting no, but it did have the desired effect. It cut through, all of the explanations, the carefully, constructed explanations that I'd given previously hadn't done it. And it needed to be a very firm, hard no. And that taught me. I guess it was a situation where things could have gone very, very wrong, but actually ended up going well.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And you've never kind of reached boiling point again?
Well, I wouldn't describe it quite as boiling point, but I definitely snapped.
Yeah, I think Chris Voss talks about that and where it's appropriate to show anger, I suppose, and disappointment at the other party, because it breaks the cycle. It disrupts the pattern. Yeah, and you need that sometimes. But
I think in this case, it just needed to be firm and just really clearly understood. Yeah. I'm sure the language barrier, they were probably using the language barrier a little in their favor as well, just to sort of, no, maybe you don't quite understand us. We just ask, just, that dangerous word, just.
Yeah, and like with negotiation, there's always wiggle room, and until there isn't.
Yes, and, you need to know your boundary, and that was mine, and I had to dig my heels in at that point.
So thank you for sharing that. So final thoughts then, in terms of biggest lessons from your career. I know there's a big final thought, but anything else you'd like to share, like key lessons?
I think that, and this is what I describe as a point of view, and I recommend everybody sort of develops their point of view. But I suppose mine has been, from my experience and learning, is that, and this rubs people up the wrong way sometimes a little bit, but I also think that when we do develop our point of view, it should rub some people up the wrong way, because if it doesn't, then it's just a truism, right? Everybody just agrees, and we shrug our shoulders and forget about it. But I suppose the conclusion that I've reached is that to succeed in the design business, you have to be good. It's a competitive field. The market is flooded. So you have to reach a certain level and clear a certain bar. But I suppose what I've come to find is that once you have cleared that bar, the thing that will make the biggest difference to your success, your continued success, and what maybe separates the really successful from everybody else, is not continuing to strive for that extra 1 to 5% of creativity and design skill. It's actually augmenting that with commercial skills. They're the people who really, really do well in our profession, because it's bloody hard. And like I said, a lot of people really struggle with that, because we've got to be absolutely at our very, very best. But I did a fairly sort of cheeky LinkedIn poll a little while ago, and bear in mind, almost everybody in my network is a designer or connected to design. And I asked, if the quality of your design work went up or down by 10%, would your clients even notice?
Right.
And I was quite surprised to see that I think it was just over half the people, even bearing in mind they're all designers and have a certain vested interest or bias at least, said no, they wouldn't notice.
Were the options just those two?
Yes.
Or,
yeah.
Okay.
It was, would they notice or not? Yeah. And it was sort of deliberately, forcing that choice. And I think, one of the reasons is that design is a very subjective business. And many times, not always, but our clients aren't educated, or maybe as educated in design as we are. And yes, it has to clear a certain bar. It has to be good. It has to be good, because it won't succeed in the market, and you won't succeed in the market if it isn't good. But you can pour huge amounts of effort into trying to just get that a little bit better, or you could sharpen your commercial skills. And I know which one I think is going to make the biggest difference.
Yeah, absolutely. What was the response overall to that post then? Because it could be quite a contentious topic, and that's not a bad thing, on social media. You want people to react, good or bad, But did you have a lot of people fill in the poll, or
it was pretty good. It was pretty good. But like I said, most people are coming from a design background who are in my network, and so I was kind of, it's anonymous as well, I suppose. Yeah. So people can be comfortable. But I was pleased that as many as 50% of people sort of thought, actually, what? Probably they wouldn't.
Yeah.
And I followed it up with another question, which was, if the quality of your service went up or down by 10%, would your clients notice? And I could have asked, if your prices went up or down, would your clients notice? So I think there are other things that clients will notice, perhaps before they notice a slight change, for good or bad, in the quality of your design work. So I guess what I'm saying is it pays to focus on those things as well as the quality of your design work.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, we're coming up to time, but I think it'd be good to talk about just very briefly LinkedIn. Obviously, we've had quite a few conversations on LinkedIn.
Met on LinkedIn.
We met on LinkedIn. And you mentioned it on the huddle yesterday. Actually, I don't think we actually discussed it too much, but you put it as your intake for the huddle that we had. So, you listed LinkedIn as a key tool or bit of software that you just couldn't do without.
I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with LinkedIn because I'm not a social media person. I've never had an Instagram account. I've never had a Facebook account. So LinkedIn is my only social media vice, I guess. And I think it has changed dramatically. You know, those of us who post a lot have probably seen a big reduction in engagement over the last couple of years. And I get sucked into it. I spend far too long on there, far too long doom scrolling, and when I shouldn't be. But I do think it is a great way, and there's more and more kind of, you know, how can I describe it? You know, sort of, it used to be a professional networking site. I think it has now become full on social media, you know, and the advent of the sort of portrait videos and so on. And there's some pretty awful, you know, a lot of awful content on there. But I think there's still some really great content on there. And I think if you kind of curate your feed a little bit and try and weed out some of the crap and follow some really good people, you can see some great stuff. I treat it as a way of starting conversations. And if you sort of think of it that way, you know, it's not a way to land new business, but it's a great way to just meet new people and start new conversations and open your eyes to things that you wouldn't have seen otherwise. But a really unexpected thing that I found working with LinkedIn and writing content for LinkedIn is that it forces you to really examine a subject. If you're going to write an article about something, you've got to think about it quite deeply, and you've got to structure it and codify things. And LinkedIn, because that's where I publish my content, it forces me to do that. And it means I get to know whatever topic a lot better than I would have done without having written about it. And that then makes it easier to talk about it, either on podcasts like this or just when you're speaking to somebody, because you've really examined it through the process of writing. Absolutely, so that's perhaps an unexpected benefit of LinkedIn that I found.
Yeah. I think you've got to be authentic. You've got to be yourself. You've got to talk about stuff that you know on there, because it's very easy to spot those that are just, you know, bluffing their way through it, and especially if it's been written by AI, you know.
But I think back to that point I talked about earlier about point of view as well. I think you also have to have an opinion. You know, get off the fence, say what you think. I think so long as you remain polite and constructive, it's okay for what you write to have a little bit of an edge, and for some people to kind of question it, because otherwise it's just wallpaper. It's you know, so as long as it's kept positive and respectful, stick your neck out a bit.
It's how we met. I think you probably liked or commented on something I posted, and I dropped you a note to say thanks. Can we have a chat, kind of thing? And
I think you used your voice note technique, which worked very well.
So if you're listening to this, voice notes are the win. So effective. You've got 60 seconds, so it's literally elevated. Well, I wouldn't say pitch, because I try not to sell, like we said. Don't bother selling. But it is 60 seconds to get a question in, get the interest over. And the amount of meetings and wonderful people that I've met in person and online because of that process there is phenomenal, really.
And of all the people I'm connected to, you're the only person who's ever sent me a voice note. So I've never received one from anybody else. So even just that, you know, it cut through, and I was, I wonder what this is. And before you know it, I've clicked it, listened to it, and
well, most people have had at some point a poor experience with my peers in the recruitment industry. So my view is that if I can meet people face to face, I can get out and show them, actually, I think I'm a pretty nice guy, you know, and with my voice, you know, that helps.
It just makes it more personal, right? Yeah,
it really does.
And it's not just another DM.
Can't copy and paste. Well, you probably can, actually, but I don't copy and paste my voice.
It's an individual personalised message every time from you. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, brilliant. Well, Tim, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show in person at Blue Garage. Thank you again. Yeah, I think in terms of how people can reach out to you, we'll show your website in the show notes.
LinkedIn, of course.
And just reach out and discover what you're about. I think you've got some sample courses as well, or videos.
There's a couple of training courses that are free and only take 15, 30 minutes to complete. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of what they're all about and how they work.
Well, I know from obviously our interactions and through other people that we're connected to, you know, you're the kind of guy that will always make time for people as well. So you're always up for a
Yeah,
chat.
there's a button on my website. You can click and book 30 minutes with me. So yeah,
Perfect.
just want to chat.
Brilliant. Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
There we go.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Why Design. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to leave a review wherever you're listening. It really helps others discover the podcast. And while you're at it, why not share it with a friend or colleague who'd enjoy it too? If you'd like to stay connected or explore more about the work we're doing at Kodu, feel free to visit teamkodu.com or connect with me, Chris White, on LinkedIn. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time.